It's day 9 of WEP.
We were always curious about the fish world and how can we change actually the ingredients and inspiration. Our main goal always was to see the sea and to see the ocean from another perspective.
I think a lot of us, even some of us that didn't realize how resilient they were, I think they discovered their own resilience through the last 2 years.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Good morning. I am here with Kafui Dzirasa, Associate Professor at Duke University. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Excellent. Your research explores the relationship between psychiatric disorders and disruptions in electrical activity in our brains. Is there unique electrical activity across different individuals and across different psychiatric disorders?
So there's certainly, the brain has about 100 billion cells called neurons, and those cells are able to create and process electricity. And it's no doubt that who we are, how we experience the world, how we walk and taste breakfast in the morning, how we experience our loved ones is based on those electrical signals in the brain. So in that form, the easy answer is we are all different, and the electrical activity is all different. The question is, are there patterns that are essentially convergent? In other words, patterns in that electrical activity that are shared. And we believe that the answer is yes, and those patterns make up processes that we call emotions. And so what we're looking for are patterns of emotions or electrical activity that are changed in common ways in people that have illness. Now, we as psychiatrists have defined illnesses, whether it's depression or autism or bipolar disorder, into unique classes, but it will likely turn out that the electrical activity puts those illnesses into new categories in which we say maybe electrical activity is disrupted in one area, and that gives you the common set of symptoms that might show up in depression and Alzheimer's, so sort of the shared symptoms. So we think ultimately learning about those electrical patterns will even change how we think about disease.
Fantastic, very fascinating. How far away are we to using electrical therapy to stimulate our brain activity?
Yeah, so it turns out we're actually not that far. So electrical brain stimulation is one of the oldest and classic treatments for mental illness, right? So when you think about treatments for mental illness, they fall into 3 categories. Most people think about pharmacological agents, so chemistry, right? Things like Prozac or other agents that you can take. It turns out, well before we had things like Prozac, we had electrical stimulation of the brain.
Yes.
So this is what we call electroconvulsive therapy. And it turns out for illnesses like depression, still to this day, the most effective treatment for depression is electroconvulsive therapy.
No way.
It is more effective than even the pharmacological agents we take, things like Prozac. And then, of course, the other category is psychotherapy, which is also helpful. Now, what we're working today to do is to figure out how to focus that electrical activity, right? So send it to the right part of the brain with the right timing. And you can think about this in the same way we think about electricity being medicine for other types of illnesses, things like heart disease.
Yeah.
So if somebody was to pass out, fall on the floor, you might get a defibrillator and shock their whole heart, right? So you're sending electricity everywhere.
Yeah.
But if somebody's having a heart rhythm problem, right, you might implant a pacemaker, right? Because the pacemaker sends less electricity to the right place, while the defibrillator sends electricity everywhere. So one might think of electroconvulsive therapy as a defibrillator, right?
Yes.
It's probably a lot of energy. Indiscriminately going everywhere, while the new therapies are about sending targeted electrical activity to the right part of the brain.
That sounds very promising, actually, not as scary as it sounds.
Yeah, well, so the tools are getting more and more sophisticated, right? So there are versions that look like pacemakers, so you're putting electrical activity just at the right spot. And the reason why that's important is because then you could avoid side effects, right?
Yeah.
When, like medicine, if they go everywhere, you can get side effects. You want medicine to go to the right place at the right time. The same way with electricity. There are also newer tools in which you can send electricity or energy into the brain without actually needing to go through the skull.
Wow.
And these are techniques, the name of one of them is transcranial, so instead of across the skull, magnetic stimulation. And here it takes advantage of physics in which you can change magnetic fields.
Yeah.
And when you change magnetic fields, you change electrical fields.
Right.
So the magnetic fields pass through the skull, stimulate the brain, change the way the electricity is working, and you can send that to specific parts of the brain. And that's already been shown to be effective for treating things like depression.
That's amazing. Well, thank you for your time, and we look forward to your speech later on today.
Looking forward to it as well. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you.
All right,
thank you
thank
so
you.
much.